You can Today's lesson 5.8, day 2. Yesterday we talked about special right triangles that were 45, 45, 90, where the legs were the same length, and if we knew the length of the leg, we could multiply it by the square root of 2 in order to find the hypotenuse, or if we knew the hypotenuse, we could divide by the square root of 2 in order to find the length of the legs. Today's lesson is going to be a little bit more involved. It's 30, 60, 90, so now we have a scalene triangle. So if we're given one of the sides, because all the sides are different lengths, now we're going to be using one of 3 different formulas in order to solve for the missing part. So today we're going to justify and apply properties of 30, 60, 90 triangles. Okay, so in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse is twice the length of the shortest leg. Remember back to when we did Pythagorean theorem, I told you while it didn't matter which leg you let represent A, which leg you represent B, I recommended you to let A be the shorter leg and B be the longer leg, and this is why. In a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the shorter leg is going to be A, and the longer leg is going to be B. So when we know the shorter leg, we multiply it by 2, and we can find the hypotenuse, or C. The length of the longer leg, or leg B, would be the square root of 3 times the length of the shortest leg. So we label triangle, leg A is the shortest leg. The shortest leg will always be opposite the 30-degree angle, because the smaller the angle, the shorter the side. The larger the angle, the longer the side. So leg B will always be opposite the 60-degree angle, and the hypotenuse C is always opposite the 90-degree angle, same as Pythagorean theorem. So then, if we know the length of the side, if we know the length of leg A, and we say that that's 2, this side length would become 2. The second leg would be this side times the square root of 3, or it would become 2 times the square root of 3. And the hypotenuse would be 2 times side A, so 2 times 2 would equal 4. And it's as simple as filling it in. Now there is a couple formulas in case you need to work backwards in order to solve this. The 2 most important ones are if you know leg A and you're trying to solve for leg C. If you know leg B and you're trying to solve for the hypotenuse, or C. And then we also have a formula that if you know one leg and you're trying to solve for the other leg. So the first formula, is where you know leg A and you want to find C. A is equal to 1/2 times C. We can also say the same way, this is the same as saying that this formula is 2A times, or 2 times A equals C. Same formula, just written a different way. Instead of having the coefficient be 1/2, we moved it to the other side and it's 2. We multiplied both sides by 2. Second formula, when we know leg B and we're asked to find the hypotenuse, is B equals 1/2 C times the square root of 3. Could also move that around, it would get a little bit messier, so we're just going to leave it like that. And then the third formula, like I said, not used as much as the other 2. Usually you're given a leg and asked to find the hypotenuse, or given the hypotenuse and asked to find one of the legs. The other formula is A equals B divided by the square root of 3. Or we could rewrite this as A times the square root of 3 equals B. Again, same thing. We just multiplied both sides by the square root of 3. I think this is easier to remember. I think the square root of, or A times the square root of 3 equals B is easier to remember than remembering A equals B divided by the square root of 3. Okay, now, 3 formulas. How do I know which one I want to use? You take a look at 1, the information that they give you, and 2, the information that you're trying to find. So if they give you the hypotenuse, they give you C, and they ask you to find the short leg, or A, you're going to use the formula that has A and C in it. Plug in what you know and solve. If you're given leg A and asked to find leg B, then you use the formula that has A and B in it. If you're not asked to find C, then you don't use a formula with C in it. So our first example says, to the nearest tenth of a centimeter, what is the length of the longer leg B and the hypotenuse C of the triangle? So here's our 90-degree angle. We know this side. Shortest side is across from the smallest angle, so this is side A. This is leg B, and this is the hypotenuse, or C. It will always be like that. The short side will always be A, the long leg will always be B, and the hypotenuse will always be C. Okay, ABC goes in the order of smallest to largest. Okay, now, it asks us to find, first of all, leg B. So we're given leg A. We're asked to find leg B. So we're going to go back to our formula and say, okay, which formula has letters A and B in it? Well, that would be this one. Again, I like to use this one more. I like to use A times the square root of 3 equals B more, just because it's a lot easier to write. So A times the square root of 3 equals B. We know what A is. A is 10.7 centimeters. So we plug 10.7 in for A. So 10.7 times the square root of 3 equals B. So now all we do is plug that into the calculator. 10.7 times the square root of 3 is approximately, it wants us to round it to the nearest tenth, 18.4. So that would be my answer for letter B. And I'd need units, and units were centimeters. So 18.4 centimeters. Formula? Yeah. A times the square root of 3 equals B. Okay. Remember back to yesterday's was 2. $18.53. There we go. So it's 18.5 is approximately B. Now, guys, now, the next problem asks us to find C. Now we know part A and we know part B, so we can actually use either the AC formula or the BC formula. But, okay, the only problem is, when we found B, we rounded our answer. And if we use B to try and find C, it's going to cause our answer to be rounded even more. So we may not come out with exactly the precise answer. So I would say in this case, since we were given A to start with, let's just continue to use A. So the formula with A and C in it was either to do C equals 2 times A or A equals 1/2 times C. I'm going to use, just because I think this one's easy to remember, 2 times A equals C. We're trying to find C, so that's going to keep everything on the left-hand side that we fill in. So now we have 2 times 10.7. When we multiply that out, that comes to 21.4. That's also centimeters. So our hypotenuse is exactly 21.4 centimeters long. Okay, so it's all, in this case, just a matter of knowing which formula you need to use. If it asks for C, it depends on what you know. If you know leg A, you're going to use this one. But if you know leg B, you're going to use the B equals 1/2 C times the square root of 3. Okay, and we're going to do one of those problems here in a little while. Okay, so on our next screen, and apparently I had taken a trip to the farm for today's lesson, but example number 2 says a slide carries, and that should say hay bales, from a barn loft 18 feet above the ground. So we have our barn. The loft is 18 feet and holds hay. Okay, so the distance from the loft to the ground is 18 feet. A slide carries the hay to the ground. Okay, so the slide may be like a conveyor belt type of thing where it's constantly going, you put the hay on and it rides it down. Or it might be something that has wheels or rollers that when you put the hay on it, it rolls down the slide. It probably wouldn't slide down the slide at this angle. It says that the slide makes a 30-degree angle with the ground. So here's my ground. 30-degree angle means that this angle here is 30. Because between the slide and the ground, there's 30 degrees. Now, if this is 30 degrees, what letter would represent my side 18 feet? What side is across from the smallest angle? Because this would be 60, wherever any building hits the ground, there's a 60-degree angle, which means 180 degrees, this would have to be a 60-degree angle here. So the smaller the angle, the side? Smaller angle, the shorter the side. S and S, smaller, shorter. So if the smallest angle is 30, the side is going to be A. The slide is across from 90, so that's C, so our ground is going to be B. The first part of the problem wants to know, what is the distance the hay bale travels on the slide? So we know A, just like last time, we know A, and we're trying to solve for C. So let's put our formula up on the board. 2A equals C. So we plug in 18 for A. That equals C. 2 times 18 is 36. So the slide is 36 feet long. Second part of the problem wants us to find how far the bottom of the slide is away from the barn. So it wants us to find out from this point to this point how long that is. Now here we did not round the answer. So we can either use the formula B equals 1/2 times C times the square root of 3, or we can use the other easy one I taught you, which said that A times the square root of 3 equals B. So again, we just plug in 18 for A. 18 times the square root of 3 gives you B. Now this answer doesn't say round your answer to the nearest tenth, so we're just going to keep this in terms of radical. And our answer is going to be 18 times the square root of 3. So knowing one leg, trying to find the other, that's pretty easy. Unless, of course, it gives you B and you're asked to find A. Then you might have to divide by a radical. But for now, that's pretty easy. Third example. Third example says a truck with a load of potatoes drives onto an 80-foot ramp at the potato chip factory. The front of the ramp is raised 30 degrees to empty the potatoes. So our ramp was originally down here, flat. Our truck pulled on it. Okay, and we're emptying out the potatoes. Thanks. Okay, so this tells us that the ramp is 80 feet long. This tells us that the ramp is 80 feet long. Potatoes. Okay, so the ramp is 80 feet long. It wants us to find the height of the ramp after we've raised it, so it wants us to find this. If the height of the ramp is across from the 30 degrees, is that A or B? Is A the short side of the short leg or the long leg? Short. Smaller the angle, shorter the side. So this is side A. So again, now we're trying to find A, and we're given C. So we can either use 2A equals C, or we can use A equals 1/2 times C. In this case, though, we're given C. So now we're plugging in 80 for C. Now we just have an equation on the board that we need to solve. Get A by itself. We divide by 2. 80 divided by 2 is 40. So the ramp is raised 40 feet off the ground. Okay, this one doesn't want us to know the distance between the front of the ramp and the building. This one just wanted us to find the height. So that's all we have to do for this problem. Then we have one more problem. This problem says that a 26-foot ladder leans against a barn. So again, we have our barn. Okay. The angle it makes with the ground is 60 degrees. So now we have a ladder that's propped up against the side of the barn. But the angle it makes with the ground, so between the between the ground and the ladder, is 60 degrees. Okay, again, where any building meets the ground is a 90-degree angle. Every triangle has 180 degrees, so 90 plus 60 is 150. That means this is 30. So now this triangle is oriented a little bit different way than all the other examples we've done. All the other examples that we had done had 30 over here, 60 here, 90 here. So starting from the short leg, we went A, B, C around. This one's a little bit different. 30 degrees. So that means now that the ground is A. The height from the ground to the top of the ladder is B. And our ladder is still C. Ladder is still our hypotenuse. So this tells us that the ladder is 26 feet long. And it wants us to find to the nearest tenth how far up the side of the barn the ladder reaches. So now are we trying to solve for A or are we trying to solve for B? B. We're trying to find this length right here. So now we look at our formulas. Which formula uses B and C? I told you we were going to do an example of it. It was the one that says B equals 1/2 times C times the square root of 2. Oops, sorry, square root of 3. Now, this looks scary, but it's not really all that bad. Okay, we know that C is 26 feet. So we have 1/2 times 26 times the square root of 3. Now you could take and plug in that whole equation into your calculator and get the answer. You just need to make sure if you do that, you put parentheses around 1 divided by 2 or 1/2, because otherwise the calculator will recognize it as you're putting everything in the denominator. We could simplify this before we plug it into our calculator. 1/2 of 26 is 13. So now we have 13 times the square root of 3. That looks much more manageable. Much more manageable. So we plug 13 times the square root of 3 into the calculator, and rounding it to the nearest tenth, what does our answer become? Nearest tenth. 22 point. Doesn't it round up 22.5? Okay. 22.5. So the ladder is about 22.5 feet up the side of the building. Okay? So, the gist of this is knowing what side you're given, what side you're asking to be solving for, and then using the correct formula. If you know A and you're asked to solve for C, then use the formula with A and C in it. If you know B and you're asked to find C, you use the formula with B and C in it. If you know A and you're asked to find B, then you use the formula with A and B in it. It's not that hard to figure out. If you plug the numbers in the wrong way, you will get a wrong answer if you plug the numbers into the wrong formula. Okay? When you come back from lunch, we'll do your classwork. Have a good day.